Welcome back to another episode of the Foreign Sight Podcast, episode 17, another family edition. And it's my older sister, Vivian. Vivian, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Great episode once again. Culture, getting into what it's like being Nigerian. I get asked this question a lot. I'm sure you did as well, and you still do. So I figured our both of our perspective, we can just lend some insight as far as the background. Let's begin first off with just our cultural values. So when people ask you the question like, "What is it like being Nigerian?" or "What is that values?" What do you generally tell people?
So I would say being Nigerian is values include like hard work, family, legacy is important. Traditions are important. I think Nigerians, especially like our like Igbos, like the Nigerians from the Igbo land as it's called, are probably more traditional than a lot of other Nigerians in a lot of ways. So I would say like hard work, family, legacy, tradition are probably some of the main tenets of being Nigerian.
Yeah, I mean, so for those who don't know, the three main groups that you'll experience, especially here in America, they'll hear Igbo, which is what myself and Vivian are. They'll hear Yoruba, you'll hear some Edo, maybe even some Hausa. But the three main ones are Igbo, Yoruba, Edo. Now, most three groups, there's specific differences like anything, but like Vivian stated, the main thing, the main principles you'll find in most, if not every Nigerian household is, like she said, work hard, legacy, family. Nigerians are big on it takes a village to raise a child, and you see that even in America, amongst the communities, everybody's auntie knows everybody, everybody's parent knows everybody, and it just goes on down the line. The important thing though, and why I felt it was important to make this episode is because I have a lot of American friends who are one curious and then have a lot of misconceptions and assumptions that they have, and so it's always interesting just being able to explain the culture to them, and then Vivian having her insight and having her experience. I figured why not bring some people together to kind of lend some knowledge and kind of explain certain things. So on top of just our cultural values, let's talk about what it's like growing up in a Nigerian household. So you and Bernard, first off both from Michigan, and then you guys moved to Maryland, and then mom and dad had us being technically that is. So just talk about what your experience was being the older two children in the household.
I think like I don't think you would remember this, but like mom and dad definitely were more Nigerian whenever we were younger because they had just come to the US. And so there are certain like words that they would say that they don't like there were certain words like they would say back then that they don't say now. Like they would say a lot of like British English because that's not kind of English that they've learned. But then now that they live here, they're American. So and they definitely were more Nigerian because they had just come here when they were like their language and stuff was more Nigerian because they had just come to the US whenever Bernard and I were younger. Um, it was never like strange or odd to have people stay with us. So, we had grandparents living with us at one point, we had uncle living with us. That wasn't like weird or out of the ordinary to have like families living together, multi generations living together. I think that as Bernard and I were like getting older, they were trying to figure out like the American system. So, for example, like being in Texas, football is a big thing. Extracurriculars are a big thing, and a lot of parents get involved.
Yeah.
But I think for like immigrant parents, at least from like Africa, specifically Nigeria, where I can speak to, we don't really have extracurriculars like that. The extracurriculars are more probably in Nigeria, just kind of like hobby type things. But here, people can go to college based off of extracurriculars, so there's more participation in it. Whereas in Nigeria, it's like you go to school, you bring your grades home. That's it. Like there's no, you know what I mean? Like there's not a lot of like, at least back when I was growing up. Now it can be different, but there's really not a whole. There's like I don't think there's like PTA and stuff like that. Like in the U.S. you have all that stuff. So I think that they had to kind of learn what those were. Well, I would never when I were younger because we were the first. We were the first set of the kids to go to school basically and just learn how to figure all of that stuff out. So I think any immigrant parent will probably have like a learning curve. Just getting used to, even, I mean, you could be like, if you're American and you move to like, Australia, it's the same thing. Like you're gonna have to learn a new system, a new language, a new custom. So I think that's what a lot of what I remember growing up. As far as like traditions, like food, or you know, growing up, it was lots of Nigerian movies, lots of it was Nigerian food, like jollof rice was. Like, I don't even eat rice like that to this day because I ate so much rice growing up. Like I'm probably the one African that doesn't really like, that's not crazy about rice like that because I ate so much of it growing up. But growing up, it was probably more Nigerian food back then. But yeah, it was. I mean, Nigerian food is what I grew up eating: fufu, rice, stews, soups, and then lots of Nigerian movies. And the Nigerian movies kind of helped us kind of be connected to our culture, I feel like, because we could see Nigeria, and just different, and like from a media perspective. So those two things I think still have remained the same pretty much because we still eat Nigerian food, we still watch Nigerian movies. Now the quality of movie is way better than back then, but yeah, those things have pretty much stayed the same.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, again, Serafina and myself, the younger two, but
Mhm.
four siblings. I think, like you mentioned, mom and dad, there was a lot of learning about America with yourself and Bernard, and so they're kind of feeling the waters out, so to speak. And then when it came to, Serafina and myself, it was they had, okay, we did this happened with the first batch, now let's see if we can do this differently with the second batch of children. And I think you start to see that, like, one thing I think for me that was instrumental was the fact that mom tried to get me to hang out with more Nigerian kids as a part of my upbringing a little bit more than yourself and Rod. Try to put me around, more Nigerian kids, try to have me go to Nigerian churches more frequently. And, in the beginning it was weird because I didn't understand because, we had gone so largely a predominantly white church, meaning predominantly white people who went there and attended. And, it now is like, okay, you're going to go to church with, or you're going to go and start hanging around these people who are from your culture. So you should really get along with them. But the thing is, I had spent all of my life, growing up here in America, growing up here in Houston. And so I felt like in my mind, I'm American who happens to have Nigerian parents, not the way around. So I didn't really embrace the culture. I didn't understand what it meant to embrace the culture in the beginning. And then as I started hanging around, more Nigerian kids, it was like, oh wait, your parents do this too. Oh wait, your parents do that too. Oh wait, your parents parent you like this. And so kind of getting that comprehension, I think, helped me first off and understand the culture and also embrace it and understand our customs and ideals. And, it's all exposure and just understanding and seeing other people go through it. Especially the parts about, your upbringing or your culture that you may not like that much. Like,
Mhm.
oh, my parents yell. Like, that's one thing people hear with Nigerian parents. Oh, they're aggressive, they yell, they're passionate, which is true. And, in the beginning for children, it's like, you don't really understand why are they doing this? Like, why is my dad doing, then it's like, oh wait, everybody's dad does it, or everybody's mom does it. So it was that, just, being exposed to it, and then being around the food, understanding it, understanding the dialects, understanding why people do what they do, like as far as just cultural practices, I think was very vital and was a little bit different. And also going to school with more Nigerian kids. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of them that went to school around us, but the few that we did go to school with, at least for me, I knew them all. So I think just having them be around and us kind of bouncing ideas around each other and being around each other kind of made it a little bit easier to embrace the culture and embrace, who we are, right? Especially as you get older and you become adult, you start understanding that you need something to pass down. Like you need knowledge, and you don't want to shun away a big part of who you are, if not the biggest part of who you are, right? So as I got older, it was like, okay, now I need to start learning, to start embracing it. So that way, if I have children, it's like, okay, I can be able to tell them, like, this is a big part of who I am, how I was raised, and this is why I do what I do.
Yeah, I know for me, I Pearland was we went to different high schools, so my upbringing, I did not have a lot of Nigerian friends. My high school probably had when I was in high school, There were maybe, I mean, definitely less than 20, but I went to my class of people was like 1,000, like 1,000 plus kids. So that's really not a lot. I tended to gravitate to like a lot of like the Mexican American students and a lot of the Vietnamese American students because they were my kind of first exposure to like, oh, a lot of immigrant parents,
Yeah.
regardless of from are the same. Like, or a lot of these countries are the same. Like, you know, a lot of things that I have seen in like Mexico. And when I went to El Salvador this year, we were driving on the road. I thought we were like in emo state. I was like, this feels like we're back in the village. Like it looks,
Right.
you look, so you, that was kind of like my first exposure to like, okay, it's not just my parents who don't believe in sleepovers. It's my Vietnamese friends or my Indian friends' parents. They don't believe in sleepovers. And so then when I went to University of Houston, Nigerians everywhere, everywhere. Um, so I joined a club called Nigerian Student Association.
Still have it.
And yeah, and I mean, it wasn't only for Nigerians, it was just mostly Nigerians, but it was Africans, Ghanaians, Nigerians, Cameroonians. And so joining that helped me reconnect and like appreciate my culture more. And it helped me it helped me realize, because I think for me too, like a lot of Nigerian kids I had grown up with had been kind of, how do I say this? They've been more traditionally Nigerian than I am, and I'm not super traditional in any sense of the word in a lot of ways. So it helped me meet people who were different types of Nigerians. Some who were super traditional, some who were super like, I'm Nigerian, I speak Igbo, I eat pounded yam and jollof rice every day, like super Nigerian. Then you had some who were like, I'm Nigerian, like I'm still proud to be Nigerian, but I'm also very American. I don't all listen to like Nigerian music. I listen to like rock, hip hop, whatever. Then you had some who were kind of like learning their culture as were adults.
Yeah.
And so it helped me realize like there's not one way to be a good Nigerian. It's you know what I mean? Like you don't have to listen to Wizkid and you know what I mean? Like there's no stereotype. So going to U of H and meeting such a broad spectrum of Nigerians helped me connect with them because I would just find friends. And it just so happened that we had a similar culture that we could that connected us, but then also like we had outside interests that kind of brought us together to even become friends in the first place.
Talk about a little bit more about your experience at U of H and you meeting more Nigerians and how there were more of them in abundance. Because I didn't get that at all. A part of it too, but I only went to U of H for 2.5 years and I didn't live on campus at any time. But maybe I didn't see them.
So no, I was gonna say, so what happened for me was mom's good friend who lives with our neighbor, her daughter was going to U of H.
Mm-hmm.
And so of course, you know, it's like, oh, your daughter's going here, my daughter's going here, they need to be friends, da, da, da. So we were basically like, okay, we're gonna be friends. Right. And I went into it thinking like, oh, I hope they're not like super boring, super, you know, whatever. And I mean, if anything, I'm the boring one, but like they're very, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think, that was how I met Tiffany. And then my best friend, Beverly, my mom loves the story because really, if it wasn't for mom, the extrovert she is, I would not have met her. But basically, like at the orientation, Beverly's dad and mom were sitting at the thing. I think Beverly's dad was like on the phone speaking Igbo. So mom was like, "Oh, are you Nigerian?" He was like, "Yeah, I'm Igbo. My daughter's going here." My mom was like, "Oh, my daughter's going here." So whenever Beverly and I met, we were just like, hello, nice to meet you. And like, because it was like, this is weird. Why are our parents setting this up? But like, fast forward, we're like best friends for like 10 plus years. So, so that's kind of how I established like my group of like my first friends. And then I had a friend named Hama who was going to U of H. So she and I connected. And then basically what kind of happened was like all of them like met other people. And we just kind of formed this like group of like 8 or 9, I think it's 8 of us friends. Yeah. And then all of us were meeting other people. So like if Ihama heard about, you know, something, then like we would go check that out. If somebody else heard about something like a party or an event, we would go check that out. And that's kind of how I expanded and met even more people outside of my circle. And of course, I would say mom having knowing people there helps a lot because I wasn't going into it just like wandering around. Because if it hadn't been for me knowing those people, I probably wouldn't have met. It probably would have taken me longer to meet a lot of Nigerians,
Mm.
and I met a lot of them my freshman year of college. I mean, all my friends from college, like, I met them freshman year. So NSA would have these things called weekends. So all of the schools in Texas would have like NSA weekend. So it'd be like U of H had a weekend, UTSA had a weekend. What else had a weekend? Texas State. Anywhere where there's a lot of Nigerians, there was a weekend. So I would go to stuff like that, and it was fun. I mean, again, you're meeting like other Nigerians from around the state, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio. So just kind of again like hanging out with different people and just like meeting friends, but like people who have similar interests as you
Yeah.
is what helped me connect with my culture, because it's like we can still talk and share and like learn about new things in Nigeria, new trends, what's happening, but still like we're American and we have we're not just only one track mind. There's so many diverse types of Nigerians out there, and so that's kind of how that's what UH kind of gave me, like meeting just a different array of Nigerians.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see. And again, my experience is a little different because of the fact that, like you said, we moved, and also my Nigerian friends that I had largely gained were through the church. So what happened for me was that, again, we got to about 11, 12 years old, and moms, again, starts this transition of having us go to this Nigerian church, right? So when it came time for me to be confirmed, there was already a group of us, and we were all the same age, and that's how I got to know them. And so initially it's like, I don't know you, you're not my friend from Pearland, so whatever, it was that type of thing. And then just going through confirmation classes, and then all of a sudden, like, there are a couple people my age, like one guy's named Obina, and the other guy's Felix Mother guy, like, I'm still friends with them today. And it was just like, we would just kind of sit there as like a trio, and then like we all talk, we all congregate. And then next thing you know, we're talking about stuff our parents do, and then that brought us together. And it's like, wait, your parents do that too, our parents do that too. And, that's how we kind of got along, how we became friends. And then as we get older, all of our experiences kind of diversify. Especially if we're all coming from different parts of Houston, because, Houston's a huge city. So then naturally, oh, Felix knows this person, okay, I meet her or I meet him. Oh, Obina knows this person. And then next thing you know, like you said, your network just kind of formed organically. NSA and they have ASA as well. Like, I didn't do those weekends only because they required travel, and part of it was me being a little hard-headed, being a little stubborn, and being like, do I really want to deal with that? And, like, do I really want to go? And then another part of it was just me driving out and not being really that safe. Me traveling alone and stuff like that. So I didn't do it that way, but it was still a matter of, as I got older, it was like, well, you do need to kind of learn. So then naturally, I would just go, like, if I met someone who was Nigerian, I'd be like, okay, I'm Nigerian too, blah blah blah. And me being a social chameleon from the standpoint, I don't judge people, at least based off of like the culture where they come from. I just naturally try to just understand, okay, you're Nigerian like me, let's see if we can find some common ground. And um, I've been able to do that, and so then that's how I've been able to make Nigerian friends, both Igbo and Yoruba, because it's not a big deal to me as far as cultural groups, but you do have some Nigerians who are like, oh yeah, Igbo, and this one is Yoruba, and but it's really not that big of a deal. I never saw it that way. It's like, okay, let me understand the difference, and I learned that first of all, really not that much different. And as far as like school, high school. Again, we grew up in an area, both in Pearland and here in Missouri City, where there aren't that many Nigerians that live here. I didn't go to school with a whole lot of them, so the few that were around, friends with, or at least knew. And then when I got to college, it was the same thing. Wasn't a lot of them, so I had to really kind of figure it out as far as like, okay, how am I gonna learn more about the culture? How am I gonna embrace it? How am I gonna, make more friends? Because they kind of help you understand and they help you learn. And it's also with that connection because there are people who are similar to you. They have similar interests and similar experiences. They also were brought up similarly. So the more people you can surround yourself with, the better you have a comprehension of just who you are in the first place. Why it was important for me to, meet more Nigerian people as I got older.
Yeah, for sure.
let's talk about the culture clash. So one thing that happens commonly, especially nowadays, is that American people, American kids, especially American young adults, there's a stigma about Nigerians, especially that for ones that come from the motherland, that we're rude or we're stuck up and those types of things. So when you hear that, what do you think happens there?
Let me think. I have heard these things. I think that there's just, I don't think most people believe them. I think a lot of that's just like generalization from like one bad experience. But there is a cultural clash because Nigeria and America are not the same. Nigeria is loud. Nigeria is quick, especially if you're like in the cities. I'm talking about specifically like in Lagos, Abuja. Never been to Port Harcourt. I imagine it's the same. It's like boom, 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 boom. So I can understand American culture is a little bit slower. It's a little bit more, at least outside of like New York or Boston, DC. It's mostly slow. It's like mostly kind of like take your time a little bit. I feel like relative to Nigerian culture. So I do understand. I think a lot of it is just like cultural, not cultural misunderstandings. For example, I've heard like I think it's the Dutch. They're very honest, and and I've heard they're very dry. So it comes off a way that it can, depending on who you are and what your perception is. It could come off as rude. It could come off as not friendly, but it's a cultural thing. So I think that is a lot of what. Because I know like for sure, like when I was at U of H, there was like literally I think I forgot what organization had it, but it was like there was like a discussion like Black versus Nigerian American, and I was like,
Yeah, I had that goal.
And so I was just like, wow, and like there were things on both sides that I had heard. There were some things that like I experienced or I agreed with, but I think now we're in this moment like of like pro-blackness, pan-Africanism. People are like Black and proud. People are doing their DNA tests and saying, oh, I'm Nigerian, I'm Benin, I'm Ghanaian. So I think now, because we have so much more access to like Nigerian culture, other cultures, people are more willing to like learn, understand, and people understand that like a lot of people understand like different cultures are gonna come off and be perceived, you're gonna perceive them a different way, but it's just a cultural thing. And then it's not like this is how all of them are. This is just like, well, let me restate that. I think what happens is people are now realizing this could just be a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Personally, because I was like, I think I'm saying that. I don't think I'm saying it the way I mean it. I think people realize like a cultural thing, and it's not to be taken personally or something to be offended by. So cultural clash. I know for me, I definitely maybe like in my early 20s, like 22, 21, 23, I kind of was like, I didn't think of myself as like not a good Nigerian, but like I was just very like, I wasn't the kind of Nigerian, like I said, I like went to Nigerian clubs all the time, went to listen to Nigerian music, only preferred like ate at Nigerian restaurants. Like I've always been somebody who's interested in like other cultures, as you know.
Yeah.
So like I learned Spanish on my own. I'm learning French. Like I watch TVs and movies from different parts of the world. So I kind of felt like, am I like neglecting my Nigerian culture, or am I just a Nigerian American who likes all sorts of cultures? So I kind of had to like learn that there's nothing wrong with being either one or the other. And I think too, like I said, because like there's so much there's so much access to other cultures, you even see some Nigerian culture in Nigeria being influenced by American culture, because there's lots of Nigerians here, British culture, because there's lots of Nigerians in the UK. So I think now we're in a time where people are like taking from things that they like from each culture, appreciating it, learning about it, embracing it, or even integrating that in their lives. And now that we have like more access to different types of people and different Nigerians across the diaspora.
Yeah, I mean, and I think two things can be true. Like how you were saying, you're a Nigerian American who likes learning about different cultures, but you also were trying to learn more about your culture. It's the same thing with me, right? What happened with me was when I was young. So first off, America and just the world in general was not as progressive today as it was 15. Like it's way more progressive today than it was 10, 15 years ago. When I was growing up, what I heard a lot was stuff like "you're not black, you're Nigerian," right? And I didn't understand what that meant. I was like, I'm just a person. So naturally, what happened initially when I was young and I was immature was I'm like, I just want to be like seen as Michael the person. I don't want to be seen as Michael the Nigerian person, Michael the black person, Michael the whatever. So that became a thing, and so it wasn't that I was denying it, but I was just like, I don't want to be judged for it. Just like people don't want to be judged based off of their cultural thing or the cultural disposition. It is what it is. But then I was like, as I got older and first off, me diversifying my experiences as far as like meeting people from all different types of backgrounds. I'm like, everybody has something to offer, and honestly, we're not that much different. So let's all learn from one another. And like in that process, though, I was like, well, am I really trying to learn all that I can? So my whole thing was, me being a person who grew up around the entire spectrum as far as people and like backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds. I'm like, we're not all different, really. We all have things that we have in common. We all have our differences, but really, truly, if we all understand one another, then, we'll see that we're not that much, we're not that far off. And so in that process, though, I was trying to like, really like think to myself, like, am I trying to learn as much about my culture as I can, or like as I could be? Now, again, there's always something you can learn. There's always a way you can be better, right? So then I started really trying to embrace it as much as I can, which is like getting into the language, wearing the dress wear, like wearing the the regular shirts, the long robe stuff. That stuff is hot, so I'm not really too much into it, but I'm learning about it. And that's just the thing. Knowledge and understanding. I think that's one thing that the world is, trying to get better at, but we're still in the process of evolving as far as understanding different cultures. I think with just here in America, I can speak on us diversifying people a little bit more open-minded and a little bit more woke, but we still have a lot of room to improve, and I think we're doing that. And that's the whole reason why we open this conversation. It's just to inform people and educate.
It's funny that you mentioned like you're not the whole like you're not black or Nigerian thing. I don't remember hearing that, but I like when I was young, like elementary school, middle school, I used to tell people all the time, especially like elementary school. I don't remember after that, but I don't know why. I'd always tell people like, oh, my parents are from Nigeria. Yeah, my parents are from Nigeria. Yeah, my parents are from Nigeria. Oh yeah, my mom's from Nigeria. Like I would always tell people that. And like one time this girl was like, why do you always like brag that your parents are from Africa? And I didn't think about it. Like I didn't think about like I didn't think I was bragging. I just thought I was like saying something. Like so but the whole like I never thought of myself as like because the thing is I realized like before I used to say like people said, do you prefer Nigerian American? Do you prefer Nigerian? Do you prefer American? And I would say, I don't care if you call me Nigerian or Nigerian American. Now, I would say I definitely prefer, not that I prefer, but I think Nigerian American is more appropriate. Yeah. Because in Nigeria, when I went to Nigeria, like the 2015, so my second to last trip, I was like, no, I'm actually very American. Like, I'm not Nigerian culture. Because the thing is, Nigerian American culture and Nigerian culture are not the same thing. I'm very much Nigerian American. I'm, Nigeria is different than America. Even no matter, if you all your friends, if you live here, all your friends are Nigerian, you speak the language, you eat the food, whatever, like you're still in America, and that shapes who you are as a person. Just like being a Nigerian, being in Nigeria is different experience. Being a Nigerian there and being a Nigerian in a different country is a different experience. So I realized like I can't really say I'm Nigerian because it implies like I'm from Nigeria and was raised in that culture, and I wasn't. Like I was raised in Nigerian culture. I wasn't raised in Nigerian culture in Nigeria, because that's a different thing.
Yeah, and it's much different. And it's very glaring. I mean, I experienced it. Like there are certain Nigerian people that I've met and then meet where it's like they're from the motherland, they're from Nigeria, and then like I'll meet them and they have pitching English and all these things, and they're like, you don't even sound like you're from Nigeria. Like, are you Nigerian? I'm like, well, I grew up here. And then there's that aspect of it all. And then like there are certain things that like people who grow up in Nigeria, they're surprised about. Like, they're like, "Ah, you don't speak the language, like stuff like that. Or you don't wear this, you don't do this." And it's like, well, I grew up here in America, it's a little different. So even that, like, it is true that that distinction of being Nigerian American versus just being Nigerian or just being American, like all those things, you have to kind of define it. And for me, I went through the same thing as far as like, okay, first it was you're not black and Nigerian, right? Then I started saying I'm Nigerian. They're like, wait, but you grew up here, so you're American or you're black, blah blah blah, right? And then I'm like, well, technically, my parents grew up in Nigeria, I grew up here, right? And so then what it just became like, it got to a point where I was like, look, this is what it is. I grew up here in America. My parents are from Nigeria. I grew up in Nigerian culture. So however you define it, however you define it, I try not to get offended, or I don't really get offended, but it's just I just explain to people and let them have their, opinion about what it is. Because in the end, I'm a person. Those are my customs. Those are what I do. Those are my person, right? And I think it's strange though. Like people trying to figure out for themselves, like, what are they? What should I identify myself as? I think that's the thing where people struggle. Because it's not just us, Nigerians. I see this in most Asian cultures. I see this in Hispanic cultures, like that trying to really embrace who they are, but then not coming off stuck up, as you say, like, why do you keep talking about your parents being from Nigeria? Why do you keep talking about your parents being from here? It's like, well, we're just trying to explain, like, when we say certain things, why we think certain things, it's like there's both cultures, right? Now, I think that's an advantage because you can understand American culture, but then you still have the Nigerian principle. It's not too much of one or the other for us, so it enabled us to be able to adapt to live in America. I think if we had grown up in Nigeria and then had migrated here, we'd have had Nigerian work ethic and Nigerian customs and everything. We'd have had the culture more ingrained, but then I think adjusting and adapting to American culture would have been a little more difficult, if possible.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I don't get offended. When somebody, like, I remember one time, like in college, I was working at a part-time job, and it was the World Cup, and my supervisor was like, "Why do you cheer for Nigeria when you're American?" And I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
"Both." Like, I don't.
Yeah.
I cheer for the French team. I just cheer, and I'm like I know I'm American, but like my family is from Nigeria. I wasn't like my parents came to Nigeria and I never heard about Nigeria again. Like I'm culturally a Nigerian American.
Exactly.
So that's not offensive, but it's just annoying because the thing is, like, I know what I want to be identified as. It's not really your problem to tell me, no, technically you're not, you're not a Nigerian, you're just American. So yeah, I am American, but I'm ethnically like African. Like if I had been born in Canada, like I would be Nigerian still. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Exactly.
that, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it's all just people's, like identification and things of that nature. I mean, again, not that big of a deal as far as what other people see you as long as you understand who you are. That's the main thing, for me. If people be comfortable in their own skin and, have to be sure as far as how they identify themselves. Like you said, I myself identify as Nigerian American, so like that's if people want to debate that, so it's fine. But people being able to embrace who they are is important.
Yeah, that's true. And I think because like when I was younger, I didn't really like understand the language, not the language. I didn't really understand like how I wanted to be identified. But now that I do, if somebody were to say, "You're not Nigerian, you're American," I'm like, "I'm both."
Exactly. Like,
that's what I said. Like, and I know why I said it. That's why I said it. You know what I mean? It's like I don't just, so yeah.
let's talk about you've been back home what, 2 times or 3 times?
4 times. I went in '95 with mom and dad before y'all were born. I don't remember that much. Then I went when we all went last time. The only time you've been was I think 2003. 2005, and then I went 2015, so it had been 10 years. And I wasn't working, so I was like, let me go to Nigeria. And I was there for 2 weeks, and I was like, I need to go. Like, I was like, 2.5 weeks in Nigeria is a long time. And that's when I realized like, I'm very American. And then I was just there last September, and it was fun. Like, I had a good time. I don't actually. It's funny people say going back home. I don't actually call Nigeria home.
Mhm. Right. You didn't go.
Yeah, I call it. I'm just America's. Like home is to me is the U.S.
Right.
I've just grown up here, but yeah, I mean it's fun. It's every experience was different. I definitely think. Of course, I don't remember when I went when I was 3, but when I went when we were there when I was 13, I didn't. I was definitely like a spoiled American kid. I was like, "Where's the AC? Where's the TV? Where's the internet?
Mhm.
Where's this? Where's that? I want to go." We were like, this is such a like it was so long because it was just there were not all the American conveniences.
Yeah.
Then I went in 2015 to see grandma, our paternal grandmother.
Yeah.
I stayed in the city and then I went to the village and I was there for about like I was in the village for like a week, I think. And again, I was like, it was not as convenient as being in the city. There's not that much to do. There's a little bit of a language barrier, but I was able to appreciate it more because I'm like, okay, this is where my family's from.
Yeah.
This is where my people are from. So I was able to appreciate it more. This last experience was definitely more of like a diasporic, I think that's the word, a diasporic experience because I'm now an adult and we were with I was with our cousin Joe, who's my age, and he showed me around. We went to hookah spots, we went to rooftop bars, we went to clubs, we stayed out till 4 in the morning. Like the shit I do here, we did there. And so it just kind of goes to show like, well, I used to think of Nigeria as kind of being like no, not behind America, but just culturally, like so much, like not as it's not just culturally different. But in Nigeria, I mean, Nigeria is still we're in Abuja. It's still a big city. There's still nightlife. There's still bars, clubs. There's people from. I mean, we were there. We went to like a hookah spot that was like owned by like I think they were like Lebanese or something like that. So you'll see all kinds of people, but it's interesting being there because everybody looks like us. Like the first day I was there, I told Auntie Meg, I was like, it's crazy, it's so funny, like it's so interesting to me seeing everybody on the TV because everybody's black. And she was like, oh. Like she it didn't even occur to her. Oh, she's like, hey, she's like, and then Uncle Joe was like, I told Uncle Joe, and he was like, oh, like because he doesn't. I mean, it's like literally everyone is black there, so it's different because here, well, at least in Texas, it's very mixed. We grew up seeing and meeting all kinds of people.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Africa, it's at least Nigeria. Some other parts of Africa a little bit more diverse. But yeah, just being in there, like it's just an experience, like seeing everybody who's like brown skin. Like it's so interesting because you don't really like understand it until you're like there. Because if you go to somewhere like Jamaica, it's still a lot of black people, but there's tourists. But like Nigeria is just like that. So it's such an interesting experience because it's like literally like this is a like yeah.
Yeah. I only have gone, like you said, that one time, but I still remember it, like vividly. Remember we got to Lagos first. We stayed in, I think, Auntie Meg's compound, and just like you really had an appreciation, like you said, for like all the stuff that we had here in America. Even at age 7, I was like, okay, like you can go to sleep and not have mosquitoes biting you. But that was the most annoying thing ever. You wake up with like mosquito bites. I'm like, what? We don't get mosquitoes, America, that type of thing, or like generator, right? Not having the power go off on you, like little stuff like that, and like eating rice and stew every day. Like to them, like that's a special occasion. We take rice and stew for granted here, and so it was just being able to see it and like actually be like, okay, when mom and dad talk about like Nigeria or going home and stuff like that, like oh no, this is really what it's like. I remember being able to like run outside in the sand and everything in the village and like going to see grandpa and that type of thing. And so like, because when you're young and then also like you need to go back and visit home. You're like, why? When you're young. Then as you get older, it's like, that helps you kind of understand it and kind of helps you really see it and feel it. And we were supposed to go this year, but unfortunately, COVID happened. Because I thought it was And it was important to go see it and go back to Nigeria as an adult and really be able to embrace it. And of course, it's evolved. To just see the evolution, of the country as it ages and as time evolves. But you know,
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't because like when I was younger, people would say to me like, well, if I would say, oh, my parents are from Nigeria or whatever, some people would say, like, as I got older, like in high school, some of my African American friends would say to me, "You're so lucky you know where you're from," and I'm like, okay, I didn't know what that meant. And then as I get older and I see people doing what happened, not even before this, but like just seeing people, doing like the DNA test and saying, oh, you're probably, from Nigeria, from Ghana, whatever. I'm like, I'm really fortunate that like not only do I know like where I'm like what country my family's from, we know the ethnic group, the languages, we know what part of that Igbo land they're from. Dad has like recorded history of from grandpa, from like the paternal lineage. So it is a blessing to know all of that because it kind of helps you shape. At least I think it helps you kind of shape who you are, your history, your story, where you come from.
yeah,
Um, and so it is nice seeing like my last trip there was so nice seeing like the more of like modern current Nigeria because I was like it's the same. Like you said, it is there are a lot of inconveniences, like generators.
mm,
Generator just go, the power's off, you just sit in the dark for who knows how long. But again, but you also have like sick hotels, dope, like hope like nice, like they have like dope nightlife and bars and there's a bunch of like young people. And so it's a good I think every experience I've had has been positive because it's shown me a different side of Nigeria.
yeah, absolutely. Okay. So then the last portion is since we understand and we know the culture, the pros and cons to it. So we kind of alluded to some of the pros, which is the fact that work ethic is instilled in you, and so we'll start just there, like you said. So there's with work ethic and why that's such an important thing is that when one thing that you see commonly amongst Nigerian kids mostly is that they are driven. You see them really passionate about attaining a good life, a good career, and they push themselves and just drive and work it. All right. Talk about some of the other pros that maybe the common person may not see.
I think that one of the pros is uh, like you said, we're really pushed to do hard, be the best, strive, whatever you do, be the best. That's what mom always said growing up. So, it's not you have to be a doctor that goes to Harvard Medical School, graduate top of your class, but it's you have to whatever field you're in, whether you want to be a designer, a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, be the best. Because what drives that is like they just want to make sure that we can take care of ourselves basically and provide for our families. Like
Yeah.
they're not worried about like you need to take care of me when I'm old. They're just like we need you to like have a good life and be able to be comfortable in this country. And I understand because it's like even though they've been here, a lot of Nigerians have been here since like the 80s, so like 40 or 30 plus years.
Yeah.
It is still foreign to them in a lot of ways. So, they just want to make sure like our families will eventually will be okay. I think for me, like, my group of friends, everybody is like a doctor, engineer, pharmacist. So that did push me into like going back to school and, just wanting to like specialize in my field and be like, and be as learned in my field as I possibly can. So that's definitely that hard work. Another pro I would say is we're very community oriented. Like again, like a lot of people, a lot of like our parents and their friends, their families are all over the place. Some people have families in Nigeria, some people have family in London, Asia, Australia. So coming here, they make their community of people that they meet their extended family, which is why we have like 1,000 aunties and 1,000 uncles and like 10,000 cousins who we don't share blood with at all.
Right. Absolutely.
So that they take the saying like it takes a village to raise a child like very literally because we have aunties and uncles and like extended cousins who, when we get older, will probably who our kids will call like auntie and uncle, and they'll have that support. Like Nigerians, it's not uncommon for like somebody to be coming from Nigeria, and it's like they're I went out with a guy once, and he's from Nigeria, he's from Igbo land, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I met him was we were at someone's house, and I asked him like, "Oh, how do you know my auntie?" And he was like, "When I came to stay to Houston, my dorm wasn't ready, so she let me stay with her for a week or two." That's not uncommon in Nigeria, like in Nigerian culture, like for you to like stay with somebody. When I moved to DC, our cousin Bucci let me stay with her like rent free for 5 months. And then that's just how, our culture, our community is. It's a very strong community, very family and like community oriented. And so, yeah, those would probably, and then I think another thing so Nigerians are kind of known as being like what is it called? Like the most like, you just know a Nigerian when a Nigerian's around, you just know, like they're Nigerian, like among other African. Like Trevor Noah said Nigerians are the coolest Africans. And so I think that like Nigerians a lot of Nigerians are very like somebody had told me once, like I can tell you're Nigerian from the way you carry yourself. I was like, okay. So that kind of like, I don't know, I think in our house, specifically, I can speak to us, we weren't raised to think we were better than anybody, but we also weren't raised to think anybody's better than us. And I think that a lot of my friends have grown up. So there's this level of confidence and like the way you carry yourself and just being very short. And just like, I feel like a lot of Nigerians that I know just are like, if I'm in this space, I belong in this space. Mm-hmm. But I think those are some things that like I see with like a lot of tenets and lots of pillars that I see in our community.
Yeah, and especially the self confidence and just it's competitiveness. I know Bernard and I we talked about that commonly. Is like, especially when it came time for him to play sports, like one of the biggest things he would tell me, and he still tells me, is like he couldn't fathom the idea of someone being better than him, because that's the way we were raised, like our community and just in our household. It's like, look, you be humble, right? You don't go off boasting, but at the same time, like you can do anything any other kid is doing, right? It's that type of value that is instilled in all of our children, and it comes off a little arrogant to certain people, and I think that's where people kind of get the stigma about Nigerian people. It's like, oh, you're rude or you're cocky or whatever. It's like, no, it's a sense of confidence that you have with yourself, that you have to have, especially if you're going to try to aim for big goals and dream big and try to tackle these obstacles. You don't do that with no resistance or no confidence or yourself. You have to believe that you can do these things, and I think that's one really good quality that is instilled in us. I agree. So now some of the cons. Let's start with you. What would you say are some cons about Nigerian culture, if you find any?
I don't think I will say, well, going to competitiveness, I do feel like I feel like but this isn't specific to Nigerian culture. I think it's just a general human thing. It's like keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
So, like, that person has this. I think there is a level of a little bit of like competitiveness, but I don't think it's specifically like Nigerian culture. I think it's just like people in general wanting to kind of like, keep up with the Joneses. But that's like, like that's anywhere. Yeah. But I will say like one thing con wise, I think that there is such that whole stereotype of like, if you're not going to be a lawyer or doctor or engineer, like you might as well just like whatever. That is a thing. And I was talking to what?
It's very much a thing.
It's a thing. I think that, the thing is like people say, well, you need to have job security, this, but like not everybody, cares about titles or cares about, those types of things when it comes to there's different ways to be accomplished. And I think that one thing I wish is like Nigerians focus more on like property ownership of like in America, because I think what it is, it's like if you're a pharmacist, if you're a doctor, nobody can ever fire you from your job. But that's not exactly true. So I wish like we focus more on like kind of like owning stake in this, like physical, like property stake in this country. I
Yeah.
wish people were more accepting of like people being entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs and entertainers. Because I was seeing like I'm seeing more and more Nigerians and West Africans in general in entertainment, which was unfathomable. Like I remember like when I was in high school, they'd play like one song on the radio, like one Nigerian song. I'd be like, oh my god! But like now Nigerian culture is so in part is becoming more regular part of like American culture. That helps like influence, that helps influence culture countrywide, nationwide. So I wish that there was more. I wish more people. I wish there was less focus on like you have to be these jobs to be successful to have job security, and more focus on like what do you like to do, what do you want to do, how do you make sure that whatever it is like that thing that you do, you are the most you're the most content in it, you're the happiest in it, and you're doing it in a way that you feel will give you the most security. Because the conversation needs to be like, we just want to have job security. And what happens is like, you won't be able to have a job unless you're a doctor or a nurse or an engineer. It's like, no, there's several different things that you could do for 30 years and not, you know what I'm saying? So I wish there was more like, when it comes to that, like open mindedness and just like people willing to, measure success differently.
Yeah, I think to me it's a matter of the way the message is being the way the message is being delivered. I think is the problem, or what has been the problem, right? Because like how you just said, look, it's not about status or anything. It's about you being able to do something. We have job security. We don't have to work or for anybody. You have a good job, right? That's why stuff like doctor, engineer, lawyer, those types of things get pushed so much, right? But like you said, to me, what I see is okay. We get taught work ethic. We meaning Nigerian kids and just in general, the culture is big on work ethic. We're big on hard work, pushing ourselves, and I feel like I said the culture can take over any realm as long as we have more, as long as there are people in it who want to be invested in it. So it bothers me personally whenever it's like I meet like Nigerian kids and it's like, oh, I wanted to do this, but then my parents say that doesn't make any money. That's not good enough for the job. I'm like, don't tell them that. Like that's where I have a problem with it.
Because no job is better than the other.
Right. And like you said, like you said, I wish that more people would have gotten into entrepreneur, had a safety potential. The problem with that job is that there's no safety net in that job, right? You have to put your neck out a little bit more, and that takes more risk, right? And so, in some more risky, there's a chance for you not to succeed. And I think that's what kind of turns, Nigerian parents off to it is the fact that, oh no, there's a chance that my child will not succeed, therefore I don't want them even thinking about that. But
No, go ahead.
But I think if you believe that you raise a child the right way, and I think if you instill good work ethic, good morals, and good principles in them, I think that you should believe that your child can do anything. I think if the message is presented in a way where it's like, look, like you said, if you're gonna do this, understand what it takes to accomplish it, understand what it takes to achieve those goals, understand what that job entails, and if you're gonna do it to the best of your ability. I think if that message is presented that way, then no matter what, I think naturally, people will end up at the highest position they can, whatever job they choose. But if you say, well, the only way for you to have a good life is if you are this job or that job or that job, well, then naturally it's like, well, what if I don't do that? Then are you saying that my life has no worth? Like that's kind of what gets introduced into someone's brain. Like,
Yeah, because what happens is it's like, well, somebody can say, I want to be a nurse. And they'll say, why do you want to be a nurse? Why do I want to be a doctor?
mm-hmm.
And they'll say, or they could say, oh, I want to be this.
Mm-hmm.
Or I want to, let's see, I want to be an accountant because I work in finance.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you want to be an accountant? Why don't you want to be a financial, what is it? Chief financial officer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of like, there's other like success is so like success isn't a job title. It isn't success is very personal. And so say like you can only to put somebody else's success with your metrics is not that's not it. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like I definitely agree with you on that. And like, I think like, I do hope like, I do want like for us to kind of get away from like success is only these types of jobs, and if you don't have these types of jobs, well then what are you doing? You're never. And I think what I was going to say was, I think I know that this isn't again specific to Nigerians, but like Nigerians, Middle Eastern, Asian, it comes from a place of worry. Like they're just worried. A lot of them are just worried. Like, okay, well if you know want to be a rapper, like you're not going to have job security in that. You're going to make money. You're going to take care of yourself. Like how are you going to be successful?
Right.
And another thing I think too, it comes from them being afraid of us failing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, people need to fail. Like failing is not bad if you learn from it and you know what I'm saying? Like every great in their field has had a setback. Oprah, Beyonce, Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, like they all have had setbacks career wise, I'm sure. And so you have to learn from that. But whenever you don't let people, at least try something or fail on their own and learn or make mistakes, not that they won't grow, but it's just kind of like that's not a full experience. I feel like.
I honestly will say that they won't grow because what I've seen is when you say, okay, I'm fearful that they'll fail, and so therefore I'll just disincentivize them from even doing it to begin with, right? They never take that chance. And for some kids, what happens is because they don't try, it's like, well, if I try and then I fail, then that's worse. Like that failure is worse than me trying and not learning from that experience. So then naturally, I think what happens is they become the parrot this mentality of, ooh, I don't know if I can do it, therefore I won't try. Right. And then that starts to translate with everything. That happened a little bit to me, but it really started to happen to the younger Nigerians that I'm seeing that are starting to come up. Like they don't want to try. Like now it's like, no, I don't want to try to do that one.
They're sheltered and they don't want to, it's everything that they do is like they have to go through their parents. And I'm like, if you're
can't think of themselves,
you're gonna have to figure it out on your own a little bit. Like your parents can be there for guidance and help and support, but like you have to learn how to like be like a full. Because like the thing is like your parent literally came here by themselves at like 25, and post-racial, not post-racial, but like some like our dad came here like late 70s, Tennessee. The civil rights movement didn't end that far after he came, like that far before. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like you have to at some point like just like I guess like you said, grow and be a full adult and like make those decisions for yourself. And then whenever there's a setback, you learn from every decision that you make. But yeah.
Because for me, it all comes full circle. Like, okay, at first it was like our parents. I'll speak to my experience, right? And even this is very common. Okay, you should be a doctor. You should be an engineer. You should do this, right? That's the common verbiage, especially me being the second like batch of kids, right? And the people who I grew up with, they were generally the second batch of kids, meaning like they had their older siblings went to college, right? And so now they're the younger ones. First off, now it's like, well, based off of what happens here, either your brother, your sister is a doctor, engineer, why can't you do it? Or they didn't do it, you should be able to do it because look at that, right? Whatever the case is. Nonetheless, it's like kids will generally tend to rebel because it's like, oh, my parents are just telling me to do it, right? They'll take on that mentality. Oh, my parent is telling me to do this. My parent is telling me to be a doctor. My parent is telling me to do this profession. And then they'll want to rebel on it naturally rather than, saying, okay, look, whatever you do, just make sure that you try to be to the highest level or the highest position, or you try to maximize that potential in that field, right? Take on that mentality, which I've seen with a lot of, people in general, then it's just like they just say, okay, look, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to try to make it to the highest level. When you say, no, you have to do this, well, now you've restricted them and you confine them to only one way of thinking. And if they're not bought in, then even if they do achieve that job, even if they do achieve where they really bought in or whatever what they were destined to do, if you let them kind of figure things out, which may take, them trying certain things and failing, you simply say, look, don't waste your time. Don't waste your young years just trying a whole bunch of different things, never figuring anything out. But what you see largely is that people, life ends up coming full circle, right? For most kids, it took them like, okay, well, I want to be financially free, or I want a little bit more wealth, or I want a little bit more paying job. So naturally, let me go to this and let me go to this job and just try to be a higher level, because higher level means more money, also means less responsibility. And so you just kind of have to have faith, right? When you're raising, Nigerian kids, and, just understand that you raise them well, and they will work hard and they'll get to where they gotta be. You just have to have a little bit of belief in them. I think that's the only thing. Just have a little bit more belief, faith in, the teaching and the culture, because it's a strong culture. That's one thing I will say. It's very strong. It's good value. So the last part is just have a little bit more belief and a little bit more faith, and, trusting them that they'll get to where they need to go.
Yeah, and I think that that comes with like just kind of age and experience. Because I remember Dad one time was saying, because he wanted, like he kind of all talked to all of us about being going to medical school.
Mhm.
Um, then he said something like a while, like ages ago, that was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, because you could be a doctor, not me specifically, but like you could be somebody who goes to medical school, becomes a doctor, and you hate it. And I'm like, thank you for finally realizing that. Trying to tell people like trying to say like be a pharmacist, be a doctor, be an engineer because you think it's
Absolutely.
job security. Like they can. I know so many. Like there, I've met tons of people who, went to law school, now they're teachers. I met, our my friend EJ. He is a trained. I think he's an engineer. He worked in, I think he went to an engineering school when he was in college. Now he's a realtor. Not that it's a bad thing to have something to fall back on, but it's kind of not that even like it's like not that it's a bad thing to have. Not that people do that. Not that everybody who is kind of pushed by their parents is doing it just because of that. Some people, are like, I can do this, and then I could do something else in 10 years.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like if somebody is like, it's like if somebody knows that they don't want to do something but they're do it anyway,
Yeah.
it's like you said, it's going to come full circle. They're going to eventually ditch it, waste all this money,
Yeah.
and then go back to do what they want to do. So I think that people, I think people are like learning like a job cannot just be like job security title. You'll be able to be rich. You'll make a lot of money. It's prestigious. It's like there are other things that go into like choosing that. So I think people are, more like parents and their parents are like learning that. And I think what you said about people letting your kids kind of like figure things out is really poignant because, people have to figure it out and they have to make their mistakes. And I think too, like when people go through things like that, make their own mistakes and learn those lessons the hard way for themselves, they appreciate things more and then they kind of learn from it more. They kind of learn, they think that lesson sticks with them.
Mhm.
Um,
It takes like, in the end, a person can tell you, so, whatever, so many times, but it really won't stick and it really won't hit home until someone experiences it firsthand. That happened to me. It was like, I was like, I don't really want to do this. I don't really want to do this. And then I did it my way and it worked. And I don't regret anything that I've done. But then look at it and I'm like, well, okay, if I do this instead, maybe mom and dad are right, because mom and dad are always right. It's like, okay, I see what they're saying. That if I do it this way, you put yourself in, you have opportunities, but to maximize your opportunities, try doing it this way, right? And so now, it just takes, evolving and seeing it firsthand sometimes, right? Now, yes, people might say, well, you shouldn't just listen. Oh, people listen, but then they have to see it. Yeah, they have to take action. Life is all about taking action and experience and learn from experience.
Yeah, and I know like for me, like, whenever I went into business, it's like literally mom and dad were like, okay, when are you gonna go get an MBA? I was like, I just graduated. There's no reason, like nobody gets an MBA like right after school. Like literally, what is the plan? What's the plan? MBA. And I'm just like, where's the
Mhm.
fear? Like, but now I do, like I said, like I always do things on my own and it always works out. I've had great internships, I've had great jobs, I've had great opportunities that have been presented to me for like further education. So, and I told Dad that the other day, and he was like, kind of agreed and could see because like when I do things on my own, like I do things on my own time because I'm like I think like what I think for what the reason you said, like if I do things on my time, they happen the way that I think they need to happen. If I
Yeah.
do things on somebody else's time, it's kind of like a distraction. I'm going around, whereas like I could just go the straight path the first time, even if it takes longer than somebody else thinks it should. So yeah.
Yeah, and the same for me because it was the same. Like, especially once I graduated from school, I had the plan and I stuck with it. Because one thing I had to learn from, like, I kind of always knew, but then had to just finally just like come out and say it to mom and dad was like, look, I'm gonna do it this way, and just trust me, kind of, And they had just kept saying, they're like, okay, we'll trust you because you haven't done anything wrong. You have enough credibility. So I was like, look, I'm graduated from school. I feel like I need to add some more experience to my resume, right? So I'm gonna work. I'm gonna look for a job. I'm gonna work. And when I explained to dad, dad was kind of like, okay, I see that. My mom, same thing, right? And one thing in that job application process is you start to see like, okay, these jobs want experience, and you need more education, right? Because that helps you set yourself apart. So when parents are telling you, hey, you need education, that's why, because it gives you an extra advantage as well as having the experience. So, and then also like having a career and having a major, having a profession where once you have whatever, like being a nurse, right? Once you're a nurse, you're a nurse. You're older than you're a nurse. You just have to be registered. And then it's just a matter of, okay, let me just pick up some wonderful job rather than looking for something where you get the fortunate break. Like what happened for me was coronavirus caused contact tracing jobs to be needed. And that's how I got my break. Now, it's been great for me as far as experience and as far as being able to work with COVID and understanding the pandemic and all these things. But, in terms of the lesson they taught where hey, you need to try to find something where you have a little bit of security. I see where that lesson is being, brought into fruition now. And again, it's now I'm getting this experience, professionally. I'm able to add that to my resume, as well as now it helped me have that clarity to see, okay, this is why I need to go back to school. This is why I need to do this. This is why I need to do that. So
Yeah, I think the kind of thing is like they were kind of saying is what they were kind of saying is like in as much as I think being like I guess like being the quintessential Nigerian American
yeah,
nowadays is like trusting and like taking your parents or your elders like nuggets and wisdom and guidance and then doing things in a way that makes sense for you.
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like it has to be like I know mom and dad wanted me to do pharmacy medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't built for those jobs. I was not. Like I wasn't. So it was like, why even just go? Why just even do it? So, I had to understand why they were saying these things and then do it in a way, do it and apply it to things that I wanted to do. So that's another thing that's why like as a Nigerian Americans, we merge our cultures. It's like our parents are saying this because of this. This is what we want to do. This is the culture we live in. How do we marry the two?
Them together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because for me, like last point, and then we move on. But I think for me, what it ended up being was, I felt like American school system, while it's good and education is great, I was like, there's certain things that you're like that are not being taught that are vital, especially me being like a guy who's trying to think about stuff like, okay, paying for a house, paying a mortgage, paying taxes, paying being an adult. I'm like, they're not teaching us this in college. And now that really bothered me. So I'm like, if I'm going to be going to school to be doing all these things, and I could be learning other things. Yeah, you can learn them on your downtime, but you don't learn them unless you do them, unless you see them. And I think that was my whole thing. Is like, the school system really is it really teaching me the lesson I need to learn essentially? And I think that was the problem I always had. And so naturally, it's like, okay, you got to do school for 12 more years is something you're not really completely bought into. I'm like, nah, that's not really working. And then it's like going to school and all that gives you just security as far as job is concerned. But I'm like, yeah, all the debt and everything, which is all an investment in yourself. And I'm like, there are other ways to acquire money and acquire funds. You're seeing it firsthand, right? It's just a matter of do you have the work ethic to put it in. And I felt like that was more so what I was geared towards when I was suited for it. So I had to just be honest with myself, and I think that's one thing that, kids are starting to do, which I'm starting to see, is that people are starting to take it upon themselves to put their necks out and try these things and, see it for themselves rather than saying, nope, I'm not going to try, which is good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put in the final nugget for the next generation today.
Okay.
Which, no, because this stuff is important to me. I've been a mentor for a long time, and I mentor a lot of Nigerian kids, mentor a lot of young kids, and my whole thing is just embrace your culture, and your parents have good intention, your parents have good wants and good desires. It's just sometimes you have to take it upon yourself. So, take the knowledge, take the lesson that they passed on to you. It's all coming from a good place.
Yep.
To anybody listening to this, or for any of our peers, our contemporaries who may be at a crossroads. But it's just a matter of you do have to take it upon yourself to figure out what you want out of life and where you want to go. And then also, have pride in who you are, have pride in your culture, learn about it because it all makes sense and it all brings things together. The more I learned about our parents, how they grew up, how we were brought up, the more things made sense for me and more out of it to see where they come from.
Yeah.
You have anything to add?
What do you say?
You have anything to add?
No, yeah, I mean, I think we are living in a time that is so like black and proud. So learn about your culture, learn about Nigeria, also learn about the Congo, learn about Africa, because the thing is, like, we come from such a such a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Just learn about Africa, learn about just learn about the Caribbean diaspora, learn about everything, because I think, like you said, like when you learn about your culture and then you learn about how like the wider culture, that group that we're a part of, it just things make sense. You have a sense of pride. It kind of helps you understand like who you are, where you're going, where you can go, where your people have been. So I think like to younger kids, don't take your culture for granted.
No, not at all. Well
And
said.
don't take knowing where you're from for granted.
Yeah, well said. Couldn't have said better. That's a wrap. Episode 17, 4 Insight Podcast. I want to thank my older sister, Vivian, for helping all of me once again. Thank you, Vivian. You can catch this episode on YouTube, Spotify, and all platforms for your podcasts. Thank y'all.